This season, I carefully planned and sewed 6 projects to create a handmade winter wardrobe. So how did it turn out? Today I'm sharing all 6 projects, including what worked, what didn't, and the lessons you can take for your own projects and apply right away. The first project is the Greer sweater dress from Seamwork. This is a maxi length sweater dress with these really beautiful bell sleeves. And what I really like is that the sleeves make the dress a little bit more interesting, but they're not too crazy and too dramatic. I knew I'd love this dress because I just really like wearing sweater dresses in the winter. I'm just a big fan of wool in the winter because it's warm, it's insulating, and it keeps you dry. But of course there are some downsides to wool, and the biggest one for me is that it can be really itchy, especially when you're wearing a dress with a high neckline like this, because the skin on the neck is just so sensitive. So when I ordered this taupey gray wool knit online from Denver Fabrics, I really wasn't sure what to expect. But it ended up being really soft and fuzzy, and it's just the perfect texture for me. Another thing I really like about a full coverage sweater dress like this is that I can wear layers underneath just to keep warm. I like to wear silk long underwear a lot in the winter because it's super thin and it's really insulating. Or I wear wool tights and a really fitted slip underneath for extra layers without a lot of extra bulk. I did notice that this knit is a little thin, so it's slightly transparent, but that's okay since I'm planning to layer it anyway. So here's what I learned. I absolutely love having some quick and easy projects like this, especially when I sew them in a luxurious material. So this whole dress took me just about 2 hours. I also found Wonder Tape really helpful when it came time to sew the hems. Not only did it keep the folds in place, it helped to stabilize this knit for easier sewing without stretching it out. So if you don't have Wonder Tape at home, I highly recommend you get a roll to keep on hand because it has a million uses. I really like to wear this dress with a structured jacket on top, like this black wool blazer that I recently found at a thrift store. I think a velvet blazer would also look really beautiful, maybe in a chocolate brown or a burgundy if you like warm tones like I do, or even navy or olive. I also love wearing a long dress like this with knee-high boots. I can wear wool socks and it keeps me extra warm. I also tried pairing it with a belt over the top and I really like the way that looks too. Next is the Seamwork Sage blouse, which I made in this beautiful Liberty Tana lawn. I just fell in love with this fabric. I personally love Liberty Tana lawns. They are definitely expensive, but sometimes you can find them on sale, you can get a good deal. But even at full price, I really do think they're worth paying for if you have the right project for them. This is one I was really excited to make because dark denim jeans and a pretty blouse is definitely a year-round outfit formula for me. And I really like the way a bright cherry red looks with a deep blue denim. And the sage blouse is just so classic with these princess seams, the front buttons, and those big romantic sleeves. I was also really excited to use some of the beautiful vintage buttons I picked up at a flea market in the fall. I chose these mother of pearl shell buttons, and I really love the way they feel when you button them. Just kind of cool and crisp in your hand. They're so much nicer than plastic buttons. So here's what I learned from this one. Invest in fabric that you know you're gonna love. I think this is especially useful to keep in mind when it comes to prints, because you can get tired of them really quickly sometimes. But personally, I've loved Liberty prints for literally decades, so I really knew this would be long lasting in my wardrobe. I also think small details can make a surprising difference. And for me, a high quality button is just one of those little things that makes me feel like I put care into what I'm making. I thought I'd probably wear this with a sweater vest sometimes, but the vest I have that I knitted is a little bit oversized and I'm not really sure I like how it looks with this blouse. But I am knitting a more fitted one in an ivory color at the moment, and I think that's gonna look a lot better. Mostly I've been wearing this top with dark denim, either with jeans or with a short denim skirt. This is one of those blouses that I really think I'll be wearing all year round. It's definitely gonna take me into the spring. Next are the Seamwork Joss pants in black silk. So honestly, this was my fastest make out of everything. And so far, it's actually been my most worn too. So I've worn these pants at least once a week ever since I finished them. The fabric is a black silk charmeuse, which is basically a lightweight silk satin. So it feels super luxurious and soft. And silk is actually really warm, so it's a pretty good choice for winter. I feel like I'm wearing very fancy, expensive pajamas when I put these on. So here's what I learned. Silk is really slippery and it can be tricky to sew, so I definitely recommend you check out our video on sewing with silk if you want to make something like this. I'll link that below so you can check it out. I also found that the black fabric made things really hard to see, so I had to be extra careful. I pinned everything really carefully and I made sure to sew really slowly as I went. And this meant that making these took me a little longer than they would have in another fabric like linen or cotton. I also used a microtex needle, which is small and sharp enough for a delicate fabric like this. I eliminated the pockets on these because I wanted them to look a little bit more sleek. So I think inseam pockets might have been nice, but overall I do like the simplicity of them the way they are. I decided to hand sew the inner waistband with a slip stitch rather than trying to catch the stitches with my machine, just because silk is so slippery and it's so hard to control. When it came time to hem, I really didn't want any puckering or super visible stitches, So I sewed a machine blind hem, which is less visible from the outside. This is a great choice for silk, especially if you're making something that doesn't have a curved hem like pants. My biggest lesson from these is that if you choose a difficult fabric like black silk, it pays to go with a really simple shape and just take the extra details slow so you don't get frustrated. Honestly, these pants look good with a lot of what's in my winter wardrobe. I've been experimenting with wearing them with a crisp white button down, and that's become a go-to outfit for me this winter. I also like them with a nice fluffy sweater or with a slim long sleeve knit shirt like my Alice tees. I usually layer them over tights for extra warmth or silk long underwear again. It's really just a perfect work from home outfit for me. I'd really love a pair of these in ivory or chocolate brown too. I just want to live in soft pants right now. Next is the pepper sweater, which I'm really excited. No, I was really excited to make. I am really excited to make. Pepper. Stay still, Pepper. Next is the Seamwork pepper, which I was really excited to make. This fabric was a bit of a splurge for me, if you'll recall from my winter planning video. So it's an Italian ribbed cashmere knit from Loro Piana, and it's in this beautiful bright red color. This fabric is just so soft and luxurious. I think it can be hard to get the look of a true sweater from something that you cut and sew because it can be hard to find the right fabric. A lot of times we end up using fabrics like French terry or sweatshirt fleece for sweaters, which I think looks really great, but it's just a different look from a true sweater, you know? If you want to make something that looks more sweater-like, you have to find the right sweater knit. And by the way, I have a whole video about sewing a sweater knit, so I'll link that one below too. Anyway, back to this cashmere that I bought on Etsy. I actually have a fair bit left over, and I was thinking about making a scarf with it or something like that. I might even have enough for another smaller sweater. So here's what I learned. Once again, I think pairing a simple design with a really luxurious fabric is the way to go. And I also think it helps to know the colors that you feel really nice in because you automatically feel a little bit brighter when you put them on. And this sweater has become another winter staple for me just because it's so comfy and it makes me feel so good. I've been wearing it with the silk joss pants I made, and I just feel cocooned in softness when I wear it. I can also wear it with leggings if I want to have a comfy day but still feel like I put in a little bit of effort. I also like it paired with shorter skirts because I think it balances out the oversized top. Sometimes I don't want everything to be oversized, and sometimes, well, you know those days, I'm sure. Next up is this black poplin dress that I made from the sage blouse, the same pattern I used for the Liberty blouse I showed you earlier. So I just lengthened it and then I added a gored skirt. So this one wasn't quite a home run for me, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I do like it though. There are just a few things that I wish I'd done differently. First, let me tell you about the fabric. So this is a stretch cotton poplin in black, and it's super crisp and swishy, which is what I was going for. So I wanted something with a lot of body so the dress would have a lot of volume to it. I also used vintage buttons on this one. So these ones are black porcelain, and they're just so shiny and beautiful to me. So to make this into a dress, I measured a dress with a full skirt that I already had, and I really liked that dress, so I wanted to get the sweep. And the sweep just means the measurement at the hem. I then drew in the waistline on the sage blouse, and I drafted an 8-gore skirt starting from the waist of each bodice piece. So basically, I added triangles to the bottom of each bodice piece and then curved the hem so the measurement would be the same all the way around. I didn't worry about making it too perfect because I knew I could straighten up the bottom before hemming it. I also decided to change the neckline from a V-neck to a gentle scoop. So I put the sage blouse I'd already made on, and I placed pins where I wanted the neckline to go. I then transferred this to the pattern and drew in a curve. So this part was really easy. I also redrew the back curve so that it would match, and then I ended up making the shoulders about 1 inch narrower. Once I tried it on, I realized that the wider neckline caused some gaping at the back, so I ended up adding 2.5-inch neck darts to the back neckline as well. Okay, so those were all the changes I made. So here's what I learned and what I'd do differently. So the first thing I learned is I really should have made a muslin for this. I thought that because I'd just sewn the sage blouse and it fit so well, that there really wasn't a need for a separate muslin. But one, I realized that I wanted the dress to fit a little differently from the blouse and maybe be a little bit more snug. And then two, changing the neckline really changed the fit at the back. And three, I wasn't crazy about the way the straight gored skirt looked. I think the curve at the waist was too dramatic, so it kind of folds in on itself like a pleat. And I wish I'd drawn a more gentle curve at the waist instead of basically a triangle. So if I'd made a muslin, I would have caught this. I also decided to top stitch all the vertical seams because I thought it would look really pretty and add some structure. And this was a good idea, except I should have waited until the end because it made fit adjustments really hard. So if you're sewing something with edge stitching or top stitching, just make sure you have the fit the way you want it before you add that detail. And one more thing, I love wearing black, but I hate sewing it. So working with 5 yards of black fabric was kind of a nightmare for my eyes, and I realized that I need a lot more task lighting. On the other hand, it does hide a lot of these imperfections I've mentioned, so it's kind of good for a wearable muslin in a way, I guess. I just love a big black cotton dress like this, and I've been wearing it out to dinner with tights and a big wool coat. I also think it looks nice with tall boots or heels. I will say though, I'm starting to wonder if crisp, structured dresses aren't really for me. And I've noticed that I feel most comfortable and like myself in clothing that just has a little bit of flow and drape to it, and I don't like to get swallowed in fabric. Anyway, I'll talk about this more in my spring sewing plan video that's coming up, because it just might change the direction of what I sew and wear going forward. And I'm trying to get over the fact that I know there are things about it that I don't love and just appreciate it for what it is. Next is my Lilliana jacket, a really simple boxy jacket that I made in a Sherpa knit with a quilted lining. So the outer fabric is an organic cotton Sherpa, and it's really lovely and cozy. So if you're gonna sew a Sherpa, I think an organic cotton is a great way to go rather than something synthetic. The inner fabric is pre-quilted with small black and white checks. And I also bought a faux leather binding to do the edges. I debated back and forth on using these cool snap toggles I'd bought that are meant for purses. And I got a comment from Simone on my winter planning video that mentioned that washing and bleeding could be a problem since they are meant for purses. So I tested one out by throwing it in the wash with some Sherpa, and I just wanted to see what would happen. It actually turned out fine without any bleeding, and so I decided to go for it. I also thought about making the jacket reversible instead of doing the toggles by using buttons and loops instead, but I decided I liked the look of the toggles too much, so I just went for it. So here's what I learned. Sherpa can be a little funny to sew with, so I used all of the tricks that I shared recently in my video on sewing with Sherpa, and they really came in handy. I made sure to size up to account for the bulk of these two fabrics, and I'm really glad I did. I made sure to finish all the raw edges of the Sherpa immediately to prevent the fluff from getting everywhere, and that tip was a lifesaver. I also used wonder clips instead of pins, which was definitely necessary with the faux leather binding, so you don't want any extra holes from the pins. A walking foot was also really helpful, both for the Sherpa and for the faux leather. I found the faux leather binding really challenging. So it comes pre-folded and it isn't really meant to be opened up all the way, which made mitered corners really kind of impossible. But since the ends don't fray and they look pretty finished already, I ended up just sewing the ends at a 90-degree angle instead. This jacket is super bulky, but I do kind of like how much body it has because it keeps me extremely warm, and I do like to be warm. It does make it a little bit hard to move in though. Because it's cropped, I really like it with high-waisted jeans or trousers. I will say though, I think I should have lengthened it. The style would have been totally different, but it's just kind of awkward being so warm but only above the waist. And I also like to add a little silk scarf or something for a little bit more warmth and style. And by the way, I used the free Seamwork sewing planner to plan and sew this entire winter wardrobe. And if you want a free copy to download, I'll put a link to it in the description below too. My big lesson from this project, and really all the projects I shared, is that simple shapes and really beautiful, cozy, statement fabrics are just my favorite things to sew and wear in winter. I'm especially enamored by Sherpa and sweater knits like the cashmere I showed you, and I definitely want to try making something else in Sherpa, like a sweater. And if you want to learn to sew with Sherpa, including all the tricks I mentioned and more, this next video is going to show you everything you need to create sweaters, jackets, collars, and more.